I think my bell ringing met Aaron's approval since Doug isn't here to judge me. Welcome, Rotarians and guests, to the Rotary Club of York, where our mission is to improve life in the city of York by connecting our club's diverse community leaders through fellowship, action, and service. I'm your president, Wilda Ream. And as you know, we start off our meetings by reciting the four-way test. Please join me. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Today, our opening song, America, My Country, 'Tis of Thee, and the pledge will be led by Steve Feldman, followed by the invocation by District Governor nominee Aaron Jacobs, and visitor introductions by Eric Hillegas.
It was always fun when Patty Rooney was still in the club to introduce this song as the English national anthem using the alternative lyrics. So please join me. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rotarians, please join me in prayer. Dear God, we give you thanks for bringing us together this day. And we give thanks that you keep life fresh and exciting, or at the very least, interesting. And Lord, we ask that you keep our club fresh and exciting so that we can find opportunities to serve not only our fellow members, but to serve our community. And Lord, we know it's not always that great, and that sometimes there are some hearts in this room now that are troubled and minds that are worried. And right now, Lord, we ask that you bring down a sense of peace to all of our members today, because we know that everything is eventually going to be okay. Because we know that you are a God of blessing. And since you're a God of blessing, Lord, we ask you to bless our meal today, bless our program, and bless our fellowship. Bless our members and bless our leadership. And most importantly, Lord, God bless the Rotary Club of York. Amen.
I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and then remain standing until President Wilda has welcomed you. A visiting Rotarian, Betsy Buckingham from the Uptown Club. Kathleen Antony, guest of Alyssa Barshinger. Cindy Donnelly. Sandy Walker. William Althouse, all guests of Tom Donnelly. Scott Miller, guest of Tony Schweitzer. Annie Mendoza, Cherie McFadden, both guests of our speaker. Kim Whiteley, guest of Steve Whiteley. Nakia Smothers, guest of Sarah Bradley. Katie Skian, guest of Sean Skian. And Bernice Quisenberry, guest of Jane Schussler.
Visitors, we're so glad to have you here with us today. And if what you see and hear today resonates with you, we encourage you to become part of our Rotary family. Rotarians, please help me welcome our guests. You may be seated. And now for some announcements. Congratulations to Rotarian James Parker on becoming a U.S. citizen at the recent naturalization ceremony in Philadelphia. We also congratulate Rotarian Julie Parthry and her husband Mike on their recent 50th wedding anniversary. And the club sends best wishes for a speedy recovery to Fred Rosenmiller as he recovers from a recent heart procedure. The Youth Literacy Committee will meet on October 31st at 9 a.m. on Teams, and the Youth Leadership Committee will meet on November 4th at 3 p.m. on Teams. At our club meeting on Wednesday, November 12th, we will honor all club veterans at our annual Veterans Day observation. We invite all veterans to wear their uniforms if they choose and to arrive by 11:45 a.m. so we can take a group photo outside of the club prior to the meeting. Veterans will assemble just prior to the meeting for the Parade of Veterans at the beginning of the meeting, and the William Penn High School JROTC Color Guard will be in attendance to present the colors. And now I invite President-elect nominee Kelly Gibson to the podium for a report from the Large Club Conference.
Thank you, President Wilda. I don't know if there's going to be footage of me line dancing, but it's possible. Okay. President-elect Doug, Lynn, and I were excited to attend the Large Club Conference in the Big D, Dallas, Texas. The 50 clubs that attended all looked a bit different, some in major metropolitan cities like Dallas, some like York and Traverse City, Michigan, with large clubs in smaller footprints. But we all share the same concerns over recruiting members, building a culture of belonging, and making the most of our service impact in our communities. Here's some interesting ideas that other clubs are doing. The 1916 Club, one evening meeting once each quarter instead of a regular lunch meeting offsite at a member business. Committee fair, have our committee set up booths at a Rotary meeting or event to help members learn more about what each committee does in a fun, engaging way. New member passport, have new members use a passport that they complete to receive their Rotary badge. In addition to joining a committee, they can get their passport stamped by attending a member engagement event and meeting 4 Rotary members at meetings. So we're ensuring they're becoming part of our culture from the start. Leadership luncheon, invite 10 leaders who may be good candidates for membership to a luncheon, not a meeting, to learn about our club. Rotarians in the wild, post photos on social media of Rotarians together around town at non-Rotarian happenings to demonstrate how we are embedded in our community. There were a lot more tangible ideas and takeaways we'll be sharing with committees, and we're proud to say many clubs were also learning from us in these sessions. One last quote I'll share from a speaker from the Lions Club in Dallas is important for us all to remember. The only thing that is sacred about our club is our impact. I'm excited to return to the Large Club Conference next year in Lexington, Kentucky with our new president-elect nominee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think that's a little incentive that if you get approached to be president-elect nominee, you'll know where you're going. If you ever wanted to visit Lexington, Kentucky, that might be an incentive. So as part of the strategic plan and their committee action plans, the communication committee had a goal to train members on utilizing Club Runner. Sarah White, chair of the committee, will give us a brief training as well as a reminder of how you can utilize the communications committee.
Thanks, President Wilda. So that Rotarians in the Wilds business has my mind turning because we do have a new Facebook group, new as of early 2025, that hopefully you have all already joined, but it is a private group for our club specifically. So only club members can see the posts, and that's a perfect spot. Just up on the screen. This is a perfect spot for you to post said pictures in the wild. So please, please, please get on there and request to join. We do get some fake or weird people trying to join. So there's some questions. So long as you fill out the questions, you should be approved. No problem. You'll make the cut. So let's look at the website for a moment. So in that top right corner under resources, I just want to remind you all, if you're logged in to Club Runner Can we just hover over resources? Couple more to the right. There we go. You have a lot of resources right here at your disposal. So you don't have to go hunt for them inside of Club Runner. Again, as long as you're logged in, you can see the member directory and a myriad of things right here. Also, social media form, and if you or someone on your committee is doing something notable and you want to share that with the community at large, go there. That's a resource. Now, if we go into Club Runner, okay, that's not what it normally looks like, but I did put a handy cheat sheet on each table, and there are several extras at the back of the room. And if you want one and you weren't able to snag one today, just email me and I will shoot it over to you. But it has some instructions here on actually getting into Club Runner so that when you're actually sitting there, you can have this to look at. It's especially helpful if you're chairing a committee because we really want everyone to be keeping meeting agendas and notes inside of Club Runner just for posterity. Anytime you email your committee through Club Runner, that gets archived there so that the next committee chair can look back and see all of the correspondence and all the notes so since we're having some technical difficulties on that front, I will skip over this a little bit, but again, please pick this up, especially if you're chair of a committee. And I want to also talk about our committee and the work that we do. It's really important. Obviously, we need to get the word out, not just to the community at large about what we're doing and the impact that we're making in the community, but also just communicating with one another. We're such a large club. I think that that's especially important to keep us all unified. So I also put on the table what we do, and we are absolutely looking for new members, and we're looking at maybe a more hybrid meeting schedule so that some of our meetings are via Zoom. So for those of you who are shy about joining because you can't, because of the time commitment, that might be something that hopefully makes it a little easier to get to. And that's it. Oh, one other thing, if you don't have the Club Runner app on your phone, please go download it right now. It's called Club Runner. You log in and it's so handy. You can see our meeting schedules. You can see member directory, everything at your fingertips wherever you are. So if you ever need to get in touch with a fellow Rotary member, their email and phone number will be right there in your phone already. Right, thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And as you may have heard, other committee chairs and vice chairs and other folks from the podium, Jason and Brian, encouraging you as we are doing some of our activities on how to utilize Club Runner. If you get stuck or need assistance, please let someone know and we will be happy to help you. And by we, I mean, probably not me, but I can figure it out a little bit, but I'm not an expert by any means. At this time, I'd like to invite past President Jackie Summers to the podium for a reminder from the Membership Recruitment Committee.
Good afternoon. Speaking of members in the wild, last weekend, Mike and I had the pleasure of traveling to Moab, Utah to cheer our son on in a 50-mile ultra marathon. He did great, by the way. And while we were at the airport, Mike was proudly sporting his Rotary pullover, and a gentleman from the Rotary Club in Cameroon approached him and they began to talk about Rotary. We, of course, took pictures, so I've got to get those posted because we do have pictures with our newfound friend who loved learning about our club and plans to make a visit to York, Pennsylvania to meet all of you. So that's coming. You may recall that in July, the Membership Recruitment Committee kicked off an incentive whereby if you, our great ambassadors, brought guests to the club who ultimately became members, your name would go into a drawing for a prize in December. I'm really pleased that Jane Schussler brought Bernice Quisenberry today because Bernice has visited us a few times and Jane has put forth her proposal form and Bernice is in the process of completing that application. So Jane, your name, get ready. It's going into the hat. So in December, we will draw 3 winners. Proud to say not just one, not two, but 3 winners for a $100 gift certificate to the restaurant of your choosing in downtown York. So we'll do that at the last meeting in December before the holidays, which I think is the 17th. So look for that. Keep bringing those guests. Those of you who are here today, great group of you that are here. I hope you'll consider joining us. It's a wonderful club to be a part of. The members can attest to that. And one final note, Kelly, just want to go back to what you learned at the conference. The Membership Recruitment Committee is kicking off an event in the new quarter, in the first quarter of 26, in partner with Northern Central Railway. Thank you, Rotarian Ashley Zimmerman, who will be giving us the train. Northern Central Railway will do a train ride and a cocktail reception in partner with the York College Alumni Association, as well as some other professional organizations within our community who may not have heretofore been that familiar with the Rotary Club of York, with the idea that we'll encourage a lot more people to visit us, see what we're about, and consider membership. So you'll hear more about that. You'll be invited to join us as well, because again, you are the best ambassadors for membership. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm looking forward to that event in 2026. At this time, I'd like to invite John Eister, Chair of the Global Rotary Foundation, to the podium to recognize honor, and celebrate Rotarians for the recent gifts to Rotary.
Thank you, everybody. And Sarah, just to be clear, you can be weird, and if you're in this club, you can still join the Facebook group, right? Okay, I just want to be clear. It's mostly for myself, but I want to double check that. If you could put the slide up, we're just gonna, just real quickly. So we've done this before, but I think it's something good to see. The difference between the Rotary Foundation, which is what I'm representing today in the Paul Harris Fellow Awards, and the York Rotary Foundation, I think you call YRF, if I'm right. So NERF, but it's YRF. So as you can see, Rotary Foundation supports international, supports projects around the globe. Like the Sandafa project would be one. The decision-making is by Rotary International, and donations can earn you Paul Harris Fellow recognition, which is what we're doing today. And then York, it's all local needs, mostly disaster relief, local, international, national, but again, decision made here and made by our board, and the contributions are local. So I'm not up here advocating one or the other. They're both great. I just am up here to so people understand the difference, because it does get a little bit confusing sometimes. So with any no further ado, I do want to recognize today's folks for their Paul Harris Fellow Awards. And coming up first will be Judd Lando. This is his first one. So thank you, Judd, for joining us and making the donation. Next is Brian Mulmert. Brian, it's his first time as well. Brian could not be here, so we'll accept on his behalf. Paul Harris Fellow +4. Next is Steve Merrick. So Steve, I think you're here. Yep, thank you. Next on our list is actually Paul Harris Fellow +5, and that is Roger Calabretta. I think Roger's here. Another Paul Harris +5 is Dan Waltersdorf. He could not be here today, So he asked Courtney to deliver the pin on his behalf. She doesn't have to come up here, but she will take care of getting to Dan. And then also on the other side of the world, past receiving his Paul Harris, past president Dave Meckley, Paul Harris +6. So congratulations, Dave. And then last but not least, Paul Harris +7. Dick Sloan, please come up. Thank you. We would just encourage anyone else. It's $1,000, and this is a one time. We do have the Paul Harris Society, which you make a commitment over that you give $1,000 a year. But thank you, appreciate the time.
Thank you, John. So today, as we celebrate the remarkable dedication and service of our fellow Rotarians who have been recognized at various giving levels, this honor reflects not just their commitment to Rotary's ideals, but also to the positive impact that they've made, excuse me, in our community and beyond. Each of you embodies the spirit of service above self, and your contributions inspire all of us to strive for greater good. Thank you for your unwavering dedication and for being shining examples of what it means to be an outstanding true Rotarian. Congratulations on this well-deserved recognition, and congratulations also to Steve Merrick on celebrating 41 years in the club. And at this time, I'll invite past President Ann Druck to the podium to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, President Wilda. Fellow Rotarians and guests, 65 years ago, our mothers brought forth to this nation, conceived in liberty, a new dedication that all are created equal when women earn the right to vote. Honoring reminds me of that Helen Reddy song, right? Honoring the 105th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and anticipating next week's election, today we welcome the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. Dr. Amy Widestrom earned her BA in English and Theater in Oberlin College in Ohio, her doctorate of philosophy in political science from the Maxwell School at Syracuse University. Before leading Pennsylvania's League of Women Voters, she served as department chair of historical and political studies at Arcadia University in Philadelphia. Amy's earned several national honors, including the American Political Science Association's Clarence Stone Scholar Award, a Brookings Institute Research Fellowship, and a congressional fellowship with the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Today, Amy will trace the history of the League of Women Voters from its national founding over a century ago to our state league's evolution and the legacy of the York County League. Many of you will remember our once influential league voter guides. She will update us on efforts to reorganize, revive local leagues across the Commonwealth, including York County, explain how leagues are structured and funded, and discuss the vital role they play in protecting democracy and empowering voters. Dr. Widestrom leads Pennsylvania's efforts to strengthen democracy, expand voter participation, and support local leagues across the Commonwealth. Amy, thank you for providing a chance to reconnect with our proud local history and learn how to get involved with shaping the league's future. Join me in a warm Rotary welcome for Dr. Amy Widestrom.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? I used to do this with my students. As Ann said, I'm Amy Widestrom. I currently live in Southeast Pennsylvania, so thank you for welcoming me here. It was a beautiful drive. As Ann said, I'm going to talk about the history of the women's movement in the United States, and then that will take us to the League in York. And I want to acknowledge Annie and Cherie. We have a York County League, and it's the first expansion that the League of Women Voters in Pennsylvania has had in several years. And so we're very excited. I think that nonpartisan organizations are more important now than ever. And so I'm just so thankful that they're doing that work. It was on. Oh, I'm not sure. There we go. I'll just tell you when to go. Is that all right? So this is the plan for today. I'm going to talk about the history of suffrage in the League of Women Voters, suffrage and the League in Pennsylvania, the League in York, and then how the League works and what we do. It can be a little confusing for folks and surprising, and then why it matters, and then what you can do to work with us, to join us. We'd love to have you. So let's talk about the history of women's suffrage. So during the colonial period in early America, women's legal and social status operated under a system that we called coverture, which meant that women were not legally allowed to own property, earn wages, sign contracts. They actually couldn't have custody of their children. They didn't have legal custody of their children. In some states today, we see remnants of this. In some states, it's required that children have the last name of the man, whether or not they're married. And so there's still sort of, we see strains of this. So the real first part of women's rights in the United States was women getting to claim ownership of their own property. And this didn't happen until the first state that passed. It's called the Married Women's Property Act. It was passed in Mississippi in 1839, and then it was passed in New York in 1848. And those were really the first states that said women, regardless of marital status, could earn their own wages and keep them. They could sign some contracts. They could own some property. It was also in 1848 that we saw the Seneca Falls Convention. Right now, prior to Seneca Falls, everybody knows that, right? Seneca Falls and the first statement of women's rights. Prior to that, even though women were getting the right to own property and earn their own wages, they still didn't have the right to speak publicly, right? We couldn't speak on our own in public. And it was really the Quakers of Pennsylvania that began giving women this space to speak in public. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Quakerism. Anybody? Great. One of the testimonies of Quakerism is equality. And what that looks like for Quakers is that everybody in the room, right, there's that of God in all of us. And what that means is that we all have the same rights, right, to speak. And so in Quaker meetings in Pennsylvania, women began making public speeches, which was pretty radical. And over time, women very cleverly, I will say, started making the argument that if you think that we are morally superior and can be the moral keepers of the home and raise our children under this sort of ethos of Republican motherhood, then shouldn't we be allowed to help keep the moral groundings of our public life as well? Right? If we're good enough to keep the moral center of the home, we're good enough to keep the moral center of our public life, which I think was pretty smart of us. And so they started sort of as Quaker women started speaking and women started becoming more vocal about their rights. That became the narrative they started sort of constructing. Now, in 1848, in Seneca Falls, it was a two-day convention, right, proclaiming women's rights. It was at a time when women still couldn't speak. So even though Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were up there claiming women's rights, Lucretia Mott's husband actually had to chair the meeting officially because they couldn't speak in public, right? So the first day of Seneca Falls, it was only women, and women could speak among women, so they were able to chair the meeting. But the second day when men were invited, Lucretia Mott's husband had to chair that meeting because the women couldn't be trusted with that. So out of that, we really see, so again, the first wave of women's rights was really that property ownership. The second wave of women's rights is what we all know as the suffrage movement, right? And it kicks off in 1848. And we see two organizations emerge. Has anybody seen the musical Suffs? It's pretty good, right? It's going on national tour. I would suggest seeing it. In 1869, we see two women's organizations emerge, National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association. One forms in May, one forms in November. They're doing the same thing, right? Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony are in one. Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell. Lucy Stone was the first woman to not change her name when she got married in this country. They ran that second organization. In 1890, they passed a resolution to merge into the National American Women's Suffrage Association, NASA. It's not a very elegant acronym. So we have the National Women's Suffrage Association in 1890, and they're using a really traditional lobbying approach, trying to get women's right to vote passed. They're lobbying Congress. They're going to Washington, D.C. This is still considered pretty unladylike, but that's their approach they're choosing to take. In 1916, the National Women's Party, led by Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. This is the dynamic you see in the musical Suffs, if you go see it. Alice Paul comes out of the suffrage tradition in England, and it's just much more radical. And so they form a more radical version, and they are the suffragists who picket the White House. They were the first group to ever picket the White House. We now see images of that, but they were the first ones to do it. They went on hunger strikes. They were a much more sort of activist and radical wing of the women's suffrage movement. But ultimately, in 1920, the 19th Amendment is passed. And an argument that I made to my students, and I'll make to you, is that just like most civil rights movements we've seen in the United States, you need both of those impulses, right? You need the legal approach. You need people who understand how legislatures work, who are meeting with our representatives in DC, who can write legislation. That's a really important part of advocacy. It's also really important to show up in the streets sometimes, right? And to hold our elected officials accountable. And so even I tell our leagues today, we don't all have to do everything, but we all need to be doing something, right? And we all feel comfortable doing different things. And that's what we saw leading up to the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. So that was ratified in August of 1920. Now, prior to that in Pennsylvania, I'll turn my page over here. In Pennsylvania, we had some women down in Chester County. We had a suffragist, Catherine Wentworth Ruschenberger, who conceived of this idea of a justice bell. And the justice bell is a replica of the Liberty Bell without the crack. And the idea was that she wanted the suffragists to take the justice bell on a tour of the 67 counties. And so in 1915, she has this bell forged in West Troy, New York. She paid $2,000 for it. On the bell, it says, "Establish justice." It's engraved on the side. And in the summer of 1915, the Justice Bell began a tour of all 67 Pennsylvania counties in the hopes of influencing the male voters to vote yes on a state referendum, right? So to pass amendments, they had to do a state-by-state strategy. And in Pennsylvania, our counties are really powerful in Pennsylvania. And that is not the case today in all states. But in Pennsylvania, that was the case then. It remains the case now. And so they planned a 67 county tour to rally the men to vote, right? So the men had to vote to approve women voting. So they went on this tour, and that eventually failed, actually, right? Because that was in 1915. Interestingly, at the time, support for voting rights and referendum was strong in the North and the West counties. And they lacked support in the heavily populated Southeast and South Central region. So the referendum was defeated by the votes in the Southeast and South Central of the state. So it went down. And they were obviously disappointed, but the suffrage movement persisted. And then the National League of Women Voters, as they were getting an inclination that suffrage might be possible, the National League started forming in Chicago. It was also forming here in Pennsylvania. So on December 3rd in 1919, at the 4th annual convention of Chester County Women's Suffrage Party, they voted to rename themselves the League of Women Citizens of Pennsylvania, with the stipulation that once the 19th Amendment was ratified, it would become the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. So I remind our leagues in Pennsylvania that our leagues were here before the national organization was here. So when we say we're a 105-year-old national organization, we are also a 105-year-old state organization. And we were doing this work before national sort of got its act together. So we've been in the state of Pennsylvania for a long time and remain committed to the same cause. So it was the Pennsylvania League of Women Citizens. The 19th Amendment was fully ratified on August 26th. And then on September 25th of 1920, they gathered a big group of folks gathered down at Independence Hall in Philadelphia to bring the Justice Bell back to the sort of birthplace of democracy and acknowledge the rights that women had just earned. So that's a very quick history of women's suffrage in the country and in Pennsylvania. In York, I'm going to give you as much York history of the League as I can, although I'll say it's thin. So if anybody here has any records of the League of York County in their basement, let me know. That's where most of these records of our leagues live. So if they're in your basement, in your attic, in your den, let me know. So we need your help with this. This is the case with lots of membership-based organizations that are volunteer run, right? It's hard to piece together records, and it's really with the help of our community. So I have member data for this league on our local league lists that demonstrate jurisdiction, going back before 1998, right? So I can get evidence of that. But then by 2001, we don't have a York League listed as a local league. So those voter guides that you remember are coming back from a time when the league was active. Today, the York League is reformed in 2025. We have 32 members here. We've got 89 email subscribers. So we're a growing league in York, and we're just so excited about it. In the mid 80s, we had 62 leagues in Pennsylvania. And we have 67 counties, as I've said now several times. Today, we have 33. Right. So I would imagine, like the Rotary Club, right, membership organizations have declined in membership, and recruiting members is hard, and the league has experienced that same trend. Has anybody here read Bowling Alone? It's a little old, right? But we're bowling alone. As a side note, I was talking with my grandfather once, and he had a Mason ring on, and I didn't know what it was. I said, "What's that?" And he said, it's my Mason ring. And I said, I didn't know you were in the Masons. And he said, well, I had to stop going because it conflicted with my bowling league. And I thought Robert Putnam would be so happy. And we don't have those conversations anymore, right? Those kinds of conflicts. So if anybody has any history of the York League, please reach out to me. And we're so excited that the York League is reformed because, like I said, I really, really believe we need nonpartisan spaces now more than ever. All right, next slide. All right, so I'm going to give you a little just explanation of how the league works. So like I said, the League of Women Voters of the United States was started in 1920. It is its own organization with its own board of directors. It has a C3 and a C4 tax status, and it has office space in DC. There are 50 state leagues across the country, each with their own tax statuses, each with their own board of directors. We are separate organizations. Then there are local leagues that have their own board of directors, their own bylaws, their own tax statuses, right? So we are a properly federated organization. Like I said, national has a staff. Of the 50 state leagues, only 15 of us have paid staff, right? And we have 3. Right. So the vast majority of the work that you see the League of Women Voters doing across the country and across the Commonwealth, that is all volunteer work. right? Which is really remarkable when we think about all of the things that the League of Women Voters has been able to do. And in Pennsylvania, it's been pretty notable. Some of you might be getting flyers citing a 2018 gerrymandering case with the League of Women Voters on it. We litigate, we advocate, we empower voters, and it's all through volunteer work, right, from our members. That said, any position we take, right? So we are nonpartisan, but we do take positions. And what that means is that we don't align with any party, right? We'll work with anybody who advances the positions that our members agree to. So when we take a position on an issue, it is because a local league has done a 2-year study on that, and their members have voted to approve the position. They've presented that to a state. The state sometimes does its own study. Then the members across the state have to vote to approve that position. And then it goes to national. And national then has to solicit, if the state of Pennsylvania wants an issue to be adopted by national, it has to be approved by all members across the country. It is truly a grassroots organization. And that means sometimes I get members who email me and say, why aren't we advocating on this issue? And I'll say, because it's not been approved by our members, right? We cannot do something that's not approved by our members. It is truly a grassroots organization. All right, next. So what do? We empower voters and we defend democracy. And what that means to the League of Women Voters is, first and foremost, we want to make sure that voters know how to access good information. We don't actually care if you use our online voter tool, vote411.org. It's a great tool. You can type in your address. We ask all candidates the same questions and we copy and paste their answers unedited. You can populate a sample ballot. It is a great tool, but there's lots of other good nonpartisan sources out there. We want to make sure people have access to good nonpartisan information. There's so much money in politics right now. It is very hard to discern sometimes where information is coming from. And so making sure that voters have good information to vote is one of our primary goals. A second goal is making sure that we increase voter registration and voter participation, right? Turnout in the last election it actually went up in Pennsylvania, but nationally it went down a little bit, right? In a presidential election. The average turnout across the country in mayoral elections, so you would think elections that people really are invested in, average turnout is 25%, right? In some local elections I've done research in, it's under 10%, right? And these are the elections where these are the people who are filling your potholes and deciding your taxes and you're picking up your trash, right? And 10, 15, 20% of people are voting in these elections. We see that same level of turnout in primaries, right? Primary turnout is quite low, and the people we know who are voting in primaries are the people that tend to be the most extreme in either party, which means that the choices that come out of primary elections don't reflect what most people want, right? So our goal is to get people registered to vote and get them out to vote. The more people voting, the more reflective our choices are, or our representatives are, of all of us, right? We also think about the 1.4 million unaffiliated voters in Pennsylvania who cannot vote in primaries, right? We are one of 9 states that has a very strict closed primary system. New York and Florida also have strict closed primary system. Those 3 states alone have more unaffiliated voters than the remaining 6 states under them. There are a lot of voters who are not being represented in primary elections. And so there's lots of voices being left out. So we try to register people to vote. We try to get them to vote. We try to make sure they have good information to vote. The second part of our mission, the defending democracy piece, is just making sure that people have access to voting. Right? And so we advocate for ballot drop boxes, safe and secure, but options for people to drop off their ballots, right? We advocate for early voting, true early voting. I have a father-in-law with dementia. I'm a caretaker. I've got 2 kids. I have a full-time job, right? sometimes voting on election day is hard for folks, and right, how can we help those people vote? So we think about policies like that. We do a lot of work at the county level. Again, in Pennsylvania, our counties are very powerful, and there's a lot of authority that our county administrators have over how we vote. So we focus a lot on counties. So it is particularly important in Pennsylvania that we have county-based leagues that can do this work. And so why is this important? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, wait, go to the next slide. All right. Why is this important? Okay, so here's some pictures instead of words. We have turnout. We have a turnout in Pennsylvania across counties from 94 to 2010. A little old. But you can see up here, turnout rate 1789 to 2022. VEP means eligible voters. So this gets rid of people who, because of carceral status or citizenship status, it's not just 18 and over, it's people who are 18 older and who are actually eligible to vote. We can see that voter turnout is starting to tick up a little bit, but it's down from the turn of the last century, and it's consistently lower in midterm elections. We see that our civic knowledge has gone up a little bit, which is great, but it's still not super high, right? So organizations that are nonpartisan providing good access to information is really important when our civic knowledge is particularly low. There was a survey about 10 years ago that asked Americans to circle Independence Day on a calendar.
I don't disagree.
What percentage of it's not that high, but what percentage of people could not circle Independence Day on a calendar, do you think?
The question is
Not that high, actually. You have low opinions of your fellow citizens.
and
It's about 6%, right? But it's sort of like, I don't know, it's Independence Day. Now, if we had said July 4th, hopefully they would have been able to circle Independence Day on the calendar. It's also the case that our House seats have become less competitive, in part because of what I was saying around who votes in the primary, so who gets to pick the general election candidate, and of course, how our boundary lines are drawn, right? Across the country, the vast majority of states, the state district and congressional district boundary lines are drawn by the state legislatures, right? And it was Madison that said, first we have to get power to the people to control the government, and then we have to check the people in government to control themselves.
Yeah, that's my question.
Right? And there's not a lot of checks on that, especially when it comes to drawing election district lines. So this is why it's important, right? We need people to vote. We need people to know more about civic life in the United States, and we need to hold our elected officials accountable, right? And that is a nonpartisan issue.
But why?
Let's go back. I'm confused about my slides. All right. So the League of Women Voters in Pennsylvania and across the Commonwealth, like I said, there's 33 leagues that we have. 31 of them are geographically based, so they're based in counties. 2 of them are like interleague organizations. So leagues get together to work on a specific project. What we're really focused on is building capacity at our local leagues, building community across our regions, building trust in our democratic institutions, and building power among Pennsylvanians. Right? That's what we are. Our goal through the midterm election is building capacity, building community, building trust, and building power. And the reason this is important, especially the community and the trust, is that without trusting our neighbors, without having a sense of shared fate, without talking to one another, it is very hard to tackle big problems, right? It's just very hard to tackle. And they don't even have to be super big problems. It could be a zoning question for a new supermarket, right? But if you're not willing to talk to your neighbor, it probably matters most then, right? If you don't know what your neighbor needs, if you don't know why your neighbor doesn't like I don't know what grocery store, we have Acme, why you don't like the Acme down the road, it's very hard to have a conversation and reach a compromise, So we need to build community. We need to build trust in each other and with our institutions. And then when we have organizations like the League, like Rotary, that bring people together, we can build capacity. And then we can build power and hold our elected officials accountable. And that's what we're trying to do at the League. Now, one of our challenges is that there are still people who don't know who we are. Right? I took this job 2 years ago and I said, oh, I'm leaving academia and I'm going to the League of Women Voters. And people said, who? And now I'm a trained political scientist. I've taught women in American politics for years. That shocked me, right? But there are people and young people who don't know who the League of Women Voters is, right? And I'm sure there are young people, if you said I'm a Rotarian, they'd be like, right? So we have our civic organizations that have been the lifeblood of our communities need some support. And so one of the things I work with Rotary clubs near to where I live. I think one of the things that organizations like ours can do is figure out how to amplify each other's presence and voice, right? We all have different audiences and different members, and we're all trying to do the same thing, right? We're all trying to build community. And so how can we work together to do that? And I think, is that it? Can we go ahead? I don't remember what's next. Can you forward the slides? And then what's next? And then what you can do. So volunteer. I really like how you ask people to invite guests to come and check out your work first before you join. The League Way has not, that's what we say, that's not the League Way. The League Way has been that lots of times you have to be a member before you can start volunteering. And I've been like, guys, they don't know if we're any fun, right? They got to come and like see if they want to hang out with us before they join us. So, so volunteer, attend, and engage. And really, no matter what you're doing, again, it doesn't matter what we're doing as long as we're all doing something. Invite your friends to join you. And that's all I have. I can take any questions about, I don't know, pretty much anything. Thank you.
Amy, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. How do you feel about referendum voting? How does the League feel about referendum voting?
Yeah. That I appreciate your phrasing of that question. The state league's policy positions are on our website. It's called Where We Stand. It's about 48 pages. It's very long. We take lots of positions. The league has not a particularly nuanced position on it, but they support initiative, referendum, and recall. I will say this is now, so that's the league's position. We support that. It does increase citizen access and citizen voice, right? It's a popular check on elected officials, right? For example, if we really wanted a state budget passed, we could sign a bunch of petitions and get it on a ballot, right? Having lived in California, every year the state mails you a voter guide. Anybody want to guess in inches how thick that thing is? Right? It's about 2 inches thick. It's really cumbersome. And every time you go anywhere, there's about 5 people asking you to sign a petition. And you're a little bit like, this feels too much, right? I mean, it does. I do think this is Amy speaking, not the league. The league's position is they are great. Amy's position is it's a lot of responsibility for citizens, right? I mean, look, one of the amazing things about the United States is that we have a ton of access to our elected officials, right? We can walk into their office, we can petition, we can protest, we can write letters. There are so many ways that we can get our opinions out into the world and directly into the hands of our elected officials, right? And that's wonderful. We vote every 6 months in Pennsylvania. We have a lot to say about what happens in this Commonwealth if we choose to participate. There's a huge burden to that too, right? That's a lot of time. And people are busy. And so the amount of research it takes to know who these judicial candidates are when so many of them are not funded, they don't have websites, or they're just kind of like a page. It takes a lot of time to be an informed and engaged citizen. And so I think that they're great. And there has to be organizations that help citizens navigate the process. Otherwise, it will feel so overwhelming. Yeah. Ooh, way in the back. You're going to get your steps in.
Thank you, Amy. I have to say that I've always enjoyed the papers in the past from the League of Women Voters. We don't see it now, but I'm glad you're speaking. My question to you is, I'll make a statement first.
Okay.
The current trend in the United States is for the state legislatures, or the people that we put into legislative power, to redistrict their state to favor their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is, I know this trend has been coming for many years. Does the League of Women Voters think about this at all or address it? Because to me, it's very disgusting.
Yeah. So we, that's a big question. The short answer is yes. So in 2016, actually, a portion of the league broke away and became Fair Districts PA. It was such fair districting, and ending gerrymandering was such a central part of the advocacy agenda, and so many people were committed to addressing just this, that Fair Districts PA is now a separate organization. It is still a fiscal project of the league. We still manage their finances. They're still sort of under the umbrella of the league, but fair districts and ending partisan gerrymandering has been an issue for the league for 30 years more. And we actively work on this issue, both with Fair Districts, which is a fiscal partner of ours, and then within the league. And we've actually gotten a ton of blowback about this recently because of the redistricting wars. Has anybody heard about this? The redistricting wars that are happening, right? So Texas began doing mid-cycle redistricting. Newsom in California said, well, if you can do it, we can do it too. Ours is a little better because the citizens have to vote on it. It's still redistricting mid-cycle. It is still not the way it's supposed to work. We have not counted those citizens for those districts, right? And so the League of Women Voters National came out taking a pretty hard stand against it, right? We don't care if it's Texas. We don't care if it's California. We don't care if you think we're partisan or not. Mid-cycle redistricting is not good practice. And we've gotten a lot of angry emails about that. But it's just not best practice, right? And so they've softened their stance a little bit, only to say, if you're going to engage in mid-cycle redistricting without a census, you have to take into account the communities that you're mapping, right? They should be coherent and cogent, and they should not be drawn to the benefit of one party or another, right? And they have this checklist. If you're going to do this, which we don't recommend, here are the things we think you should think about. So it is a very important issue to us. We're getting a little bit of heat right now for it because it doesn't matter which party you're from. You should be following the rules, right? I told a league member of ours who wrote me a kind of angry text, right? Why aren't we doing anything about this in Pennsylvania? I said, first, let's get a budget. And second, because we can't defend democratic institutions by not following the rules, right? Like, that's not how we support democratic institutions. And so, and we can't just do things because we're mad or the other side or whatever the case is. Like, that's just not best practice. And so, so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is all of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your insights and the important work that the League of Women Voters is doing across Pennsylvania and the country. Your message about informed participation and civic responsibility truly resonates with us as Rotarians who also believe that service begins with an understanding and engagement. I'd like to take a moment to recognize our fellow Rotarians and guests who are running for or holding an elected position. If you could please stand and be recognized for your service. I know there's some of you in here. Don't be shy. Guests as well. They all sat at the same table. Thank you so much. Our democracy depends on citizens like you, those willing to step forward, lead, and make a difference in our communities. As we look ahead to next Tuesday's election, I encourage everyone to take time to vote. Local elections may not always make the headlines, but they often have the greatest impact on our daily lives. The YCEA has put together a municipal voter guide available, excuse me, in both English and Spanish. The guide can be found on their website under Economic Equity Advocacy. And as you know, our speakers signed a bookplate to be donated to, or for a book to be donated to the York JCC's Child Care Program, along with a bookmark made by the students at Creative York. And keeping with the octopus theme, it's Inky the Octopus. Next week, we will hear from Vinny Canizaro. I spelled Canizaro, thank you. I practiced that, didn't do so well. Anyway, we're going to hear from him. He's the executive director of the Pennsylvania Economy League Central, a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy think tank. Since 1936, PEL has been dedicated to advancing practical, research-based solutions for local governments using data-driven, evidence-based analysis. PEL's research is currently driving discussions at the state level about revenue reform. Vinny will highlight PEL's work with the York community, discuss how healthy local governments benefit you and your business, and outline exciting new initiatives like the Local Government Innovation Lab. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.